everybody always talks about the good that happens. Hey, we're going to be 50-50 partners. We can split the profit 50-50. We're going to split the duties 50-50. And we're all going to learn and grow together. So what we did is actually threw together a really, really negative scenario.
Yes.
2 years from now, we're in 2 lawsuits. Our cash flow is down. Our backlog is down. We have a project that's 60 days behind. In 2 years, if that happens and it's a perfect storm, who is going to take what?
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Hi, this is Eric Anderton. Doug Reitz and his partner are currently 2 years into a 5-year process purchasing Mark Wilson Construction from the founder. In this episode of Construction Genius, I interview Doug and we discuss his successes, challenges, and lessons learned as he's embarked on the process of becoming a partner in a successful construction company. Join me for this interview with Doug. I think you'll find it extremely insightful. Welcome to Construction Genius. My name is Eric Anderton, and it's my pleasure to welcome to today's show Doug Reitz, the president of Mark Wilson Construction, a general contractor out of Fresno, California. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. You know, here in California particularly, we've been enjoying a quite a robust economy. And I know that your company in the past 5 years has grown from 15 to 18 million to around, would you say 44 million this year, something like that?
Yes, sir.
Tell me something. Obviously, there's been a booming economy, and that's sort of the rising tide has been raising all ships. But you have a particular reason behind this growth in volume. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. I'll give you a little bit of history. About 5 years ago, I made a transition to Mark Wilson Construction. Mark is a fantastic guy, great reputation in the Valley, and he was looking to retire and looking to make a transition of his own and wanted to bring in a team that could help him transition into retirement and then actually purchase the company, take over the company for years to come. So that was the driver initially behind.
So now, does he have any family members that he wanted to pass this on to, or were there no family members involved?
He actually has a daughter who works for the company, who was not interested in purchasing the company, but she wanted to work there for the rest of her life. So no, it wasn't an option, but yes, family is definitely still involved.
I see, but in terms of the ownership, this is a transition from the first generation to the second generation non-family members. That's
correct.
Okay, interesting. So tell me a little bit about how you guys have gone about this transition process.
You know, it started about 2 years ago, and although I've been there for 5, we started in earnest about 2 years ago. We all wanted to get to know each other, which is very, very important in a transition to make sure the partnerships are going to work out. My partner had actually been at the company for 22 years, and he came straight from the field. So he's got a lot of field experience on his side. I come in with the office experience. So it was a really good team to begin with.
What were the challenges there of you being sort of the new guy and your partner being, you know, old school, coming from the field and being with the company for so long? What were some of the challenges as you guys began to develop your partnership and your relationship?
You know, there's always challenges when a new guy comes in. Everybody has different ideas. The unique thing about this is my old boss and Mark used to work together at a company back in the 80s that was very influential in developing a lot of companies here in the Valley. So Mark already had the same philosophy that I was used to. So as I came in, the philosophies were very similar, and it made the transition a whole lot easier.
So the match of business philosophy, would you consider that to be extremely important in terms of putting together successful transitions?
Absolutely. If you have two partners that are going to come that actually don't know each other, they're going to come together. One, take the time to get to know each other before you get the contracts together and really start down that road. So Mark actually had us go out and build a project together, which was very insightful because you get to know somebody really well. So as we got to know each other, we understood each other's tendencies, strengths, weaknesses, and we could compensate. And there were a lot of chip years coming from office to field. And we had a lot of very intense conversations. But at the same time, both of us were willing to listen and learn from the other. And we always came to a really, really good balance when we came to the decision.
There's many contractors, it seems, particularly at this particular point of the economic cycle, who are looking for a way out of their business. And this model of selling to internal folks, selling to, a select group of 1 to 3 or 4 people is definitely a model that a lot of people are looking at. Why do you think construction companies struggle with this particular ownership transition?
Both my partner and I talked to a lot of other local contractors that had gone through a transition similar. Some of them were family to family and some of them were family to third party, that had come in to do a transition. And the big sticking point was not so much the purchase price, but it was how the purchase price affected the company financially, whether that was in bonding or debt, you name it, cash flow. Those things had more of a detrimental effect on the company than any of them had ever thought they would. So the biggest struggle for us being at 15 million, and our model for this is an earnout to where the profits would be used to pay for the company, the buyout.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that earnout was actually a really good, simple way of doing it. But the way the earnout is structured, you have to have enough profit to grow the company and pay off the company to Mark.
Yep.
So we struggled with, do we grow or do we stay the same? How long will the purchase take? So all of those things went through our mind. And so the biggest struggle was Mark wanted to reduce his risk and be paid off. But to pay him off, we needed to increase volume to allow us to grow the company, which just by happenstance causes more risk. So we had a lot of conversations on risk versus reward and had to find a balance, but how far do we want to grow the company versus how much risk we would have?
Okay, so this is excellent right here. So you have the first generation, the person who started the company wanting to reduce risk over time and get out of the business in a certain time frame. But then the second generation, they need to earn out the company, and so they need to increase volume in order to generate enough money to buy out that first generation, and that creates the tension there. Yeah, and the communication. One of the things that we had to implement when we came over as we started to grow, because you bring more people in. The term that we will use today throughout the company is communication and collaboration. Okay.
The communication side during this process, and between the three of us, has been absolutely open, and I would recommend that for anybody.
What do you mean by open? What does that look like for you guys?
So we sat and actually defined our why we wanted to own the company, what our goals were both financially and professionally, and we had to be very honest and open with that. So because if our why is not aligned, that's where a lot of struggle can come. So we spent a lot of time just talking about what our goals were, why we wanted to do it, and where we wanted to take the company.
Would you be willing to share with us what your why is?
Absolutely. And mine is definitely different than my partner's and Mark. This is something, I came from a larger company, and it was starting to go very corporate, which is totally fine. But for me, it was much more family oriented. So the company that I wanted to be involved with, that I would get me out of work or out of bed every day to come to work, is I didn't want to go with so much volume that everybody was stressed, out of town, away from their families. This truly is going to be a family company. It always has been. That's what Mark started, and I wanted to continue that on. So my why is to be able to grow not in quantity, but in quality.
Okay.
So the projects we do, we're going to do very, very well.
One thing that you said that I noticed is that, if I heard you right, is that your why differs a little bit from your partner's and from Mark's. Can you explore that a little bit for us?
Sure. And so at the beginning, Mark was moving from another company, started the company from scratch. So his why was he wanted to do it his way at that point. But as he transitions to the end of his career and wants to go in retirement, his retirement why is now I want to spend time with my family. I want to make sure I'm secure. I want to make sure I get paid, for the company. So very risk averse. Why versus taking a company forward. So They align, but they are still different.
How have you managed any tension that might come up between the different whys? How do you do that?
Well, I don't want to make it sound like there's none because there's always tension. And it's got to be productive conflict, and everybody needs to leave their ego at the door. So one of the other things that we've implemented at Mark Wilson Construction is listen, plan, and build. The first thing we have to do when we go into a meeting that may be tense is listen. And I'm not just saying, hey, listen to provide a response. It's listen truly to understand. And those tense meetings really came down quickly when we were listening to one another, giving true and honest feedback, and just being there for each other. And I don't want that to sound kumbaya. We definitely had disagreements. And it's good to have the disagreements because it brings out the best possible answers to make the best possible decisions.
So let's say you're in the middle of a meeting and there's many emotionally charged, difficult meetings in a construction company. How do you not only negotiate the conflict during the meeting, but what do you do so that at the end of the meeting, as a partnership group, you guys are being able to be on the same page when it comes to communicating to the troops? Somebody
in the room has to detach and you kind of take the emotion out of things. This is a business transaction. When you detach, you almost become a facilitator.
Yes.
And you can work through and truly solve the problem. Leave your ego at the door, solve the problem. So what we would do is sit and banter back and forth for 45 minutes about each of the concepts that we wanted to have. And by the end of the meeting, we'd go to the whiteboard and say, okay, here are the points that we have, whether it was numbers or concepts. We'd write it all out on the whiteboard. All three of us would take a picture of the whiteboard and we would go work on the things that we needed to work on. The next meeting, we'd bring that whiteboard back up and we'd go through the points, make sure we answered all the questions and basically held each other accountable.
It sounds like what you did is you defined the issues in a meeting. You give yourselves time to think over the issues, and then you hold yourselves accountable for decisions made based on those issues?
Absolutely. And you just said the middle one about giving each other time. And Eric, sometimes it just takes some time to develop some concepts in our head. Everybody comes in with their own concept of what they think it should be.
Yeah.
And then they hear something in a meeting and this is advice for everybody. Everybody processes things and has capacity at different levels.
Yep.
So just because two of the partners got it, the third partner may have not. And the time itself is a really crucial point. And I'm glad you brought it up because you have to give people the time to process it and understand it and see how it fits into the big picture. If they don't, that's where things really start to fall apart.
So you not only have to listen to understand, but and be open and honest with the feedback, but you got to bring in this element of patience, it sounds like.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this transition is really challenging. Why do you think, obviously we've talked about the tension between the first generation and second generation that's created because there's different goals, but why else do you think people struggle with this transition between one generation and the next in terms of the types of buyout that we're talking about here today?
You know, it comes down to we're all human beings and we all have our own egos. We've all talked about what our goals are with our families, with our coworkers. And when you get into a certain line of thinking, these meetings really bring out different ideas and it can change the course of how the company is being purchased or how it will be run. We had a lot of conversations on how to grow the company and what projects to select to grow the company. That was one of the major conflicts is how do we actually grow the company to keep the risk down? So when we were talking about meetings and other struggles, the markets that we would be in, the people that we would hire as we grow, what type of people do you want working for the company? Those were all major discussions that we had And it wasn't just, hey, yeah, let's go hire somebody. It was sit down. What do you think about this person? How do we want to grow? What's the staffing look like, both in the office and out in the field?
So that's interesting. So when you're going through this discussion of growth, balancing growth and risk, you're doing it from the perspective of both the strategy of the projects that you're going after and the people that you're going to hire and work with in order to staff those projects.
Absolutely, because the people, and we found the people that you hire really make the difference. We don't have a business development department at Mark Wilson Construction. Mm-hmm. We literally rely on our project managers, superintendents, administrators that are out dealing with the owner every day. If we don't perform, we don't get more work.
Yep.
We have to do a good job, and that's where your front line is, and that's our business development.
Okay. Construction to a certain degree is relatively simple. You've got to bid the work, you've got to plan the work, you've got to build it, and then you've got to get paid for it. How have you gone about with your partner dividing up the responsibilities in terms of who's going to take care of what as the company transitions to you all?
What a great question. That is another one that we have spent an enormous amount of time because it's so important. As I said before, both my partner and I came from different backgrounds. We were both in the field, but me as a project manager, him as a superintendent over the years.
Yep.
He started as a trade carpenter. I started as a clerk. Uh-huh. So we both came up through our own process, and we both ended up as, executives in a company.
Yep.
So our backgrounds were very diverse. So we both brought some natural talents, but we actually went, there's an acronym out there that's called SOAP, Sales, Operations, Administration, and Project Management.
Okay, so SOAP really like you wash your hands with then.
Those are the 4 key areas of ownership.
Okay, can you just repeat that slowly one more time for us, please?
Absolutely. SOAP is Sales, Operations, Administration, and Project Management.
Beautiful. Okay, just dive into that for us, please.
So sales, how are you going to go out and win work? Somebody has to be proficient at that. Mm-hmm. Operations, how the project will operate, how the office operates, the people that you have in charge of the day-to-day that makes the company work. Administration includes HR, insurance, risk, contracts, that safety, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then project management is that relation between the field, the office, the clients, and the architects. Who manages that on a day-to-day basis?
Okay. Of those 4, which one do you think is the most important?
We're finding going through the transition, they're all important. That's why they're in the acronym. But
right.
As you're going through a transition as it relates to what we're talking about here today,
yes,
the finances, the financials, the accounting, understanding what's happening with your cash flow, with your bonding, with your debt, those you need to laser focus on, because whatever decision you make on your purchase, it will affect your bonding capacity and it'll affect your cash flow.
Now let's explore this, because it sounds to me like I know plenty of guys who know how to build a project, who know how to manage work, and who know how to go out there and win projects. But what you're describing here, that sort of technical blocking and tackling around the administrative part, that doesn't seem to come naturally to a lot of folks.
It doesn't. It's something you have to really take a deep dive. And that is one of the areas that when you get into HR, contracts, risk, accounting, that's some really deep nuts and bolts that's very specific. So we went ahead and, again, remember I said we went out and talked to different contractors about transition.
Yep.
We have been talking to people that are specific in HR, specific in finances when you're purchasing a company. We're not talking typical accounting manager stuff. We're talking about what are the impacts when you purchase. We brought people in to talk about risk and contracts.
Yep.
So that's where we shored that area up in the company. And it's something that really benefited us in the long run just by spending a little bit of extra time and really doing a deep dive.
So it's very interesting. If you're going to secure a successful transition, you have to balance the the tension between risk and growth. And then you have to be very excellent at dividing the responsibilities up and specifically focusing on the understanding of the administrative part.
Absolutely. Now, I want to flip this 180 degrees.
Do it. Go for it.
Everybody always talks about the good that happens. Hey, we're going to be 50-50 partners. We can split the profit 50-50. We're going to split the duties 50-50. And we're all going to learn and grow together. So what we did is actually threw together a really, really negative scenario.
Yes.
2 years from now, we're in 2 lawsuits. Our cash flow is down. Our backlog is down. We have a project that's 60 days behind. In 2 years, if that happens and it's a perfect storm, who is going to take what?
Okay.
And then we went through the entire process again. Who's going to get work? Who's going to handle the lawsuits? Who's going to, all those things. And it was a really, really interesting discussion because that's where the stress comes in. And that's when a partnership is truly tested.
Who makes the final decision in a 50-50 partnership?
Well, and it's funny you ask that question because literally this scenario that I was talking about, we went through about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be revisiting who will make the final call and how will we deal with if the perfect storm hits. So what we're leaning toward right now is we're going to make the decision of in certain areas of operations, my partner will make the final call in areas of risk. So we're going to go to our own expertise.
Okay.
And we're going to define that expertise. So mine's much more on the administrative side. His is much more on the field side. So if we're going to make a final call, one, we're going to try to do it together. But if we don't, it's going to go to the field of expertise.
Now there you go.
And the other one's going to be fine with that.
So that's a framework that you can operate within. Mm-hmm. And it'll also be something when the rubber hits the road, it'll still be, a potential source of conflict and something that you have to work through.
Yeah, and the conflict is something, and remember as I went back, you want to take time, you want to express your feelings, you want to get to know each other and make sure you're aligned.
Yeah.
And if you're aligned, you won't have a whole lot of places where you disagree. And if you learn how to have productive conflict and you're not worried about saying what you think mm-hmm. and honestly describing why you believe it, most of the conflict is worked out just by having a discussion, an honest discussion.
What do you do to make sure that others aren't afraid to speak their mind to you, whether it's your partner or someone else in the organization?
Well, a couple of things. One, that's why it's listen, plan, build. It's listen first. So everybody in the company actually goes, hey, I'm going to listen first. Well, that makes for a real boring meeting if everybody's listening, right?
Right.
So when people pop up and say, hey, this is what I think, and maybe nobody in the room disagrees, basically everybody at the company now, after about 5 years, is saying, I hadn't thought about that. So the feeling that's there when you're saying something that may be uncomfortable, it really comes from the culture and the reaction of the people that are in the room.
Right.
And it takes a long time to develop that. But as a leader on my end, if there was a little bit of conflict going on in the room, I would actually speak up and say, no, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. That's different than what I was thinking. Let me know what you're thinking. I really want to hear about it. And then let them talk. When you let them talk, everybody is heard, and you may actually learn something and change directions.
What you're saying is something that I strongly believe, where the leader has to model the behavior if other people are going to be comfortable with the conflict. And the leader also has to a certain extent, give permission for the conflict to occur. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a different perspective.
And that was the biggest hurdle for us to get over, because you're always taught growing up, don't disagree, don't have an argument, stop fighting. Well, when it's professional and you're truly disagreeing and you're passionate about what you had, we let that go and give people, like you said, permission to have that conflict. Conflict is not a bad word. It brings out the best ideas from everybody's experiences. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So as we wrap up the interview here today, obviously, we could spend hours talking about this transition, but if you were to do it all over again, let's say, I know you're 2 years into the transition, but if you could start it again, knowing what you now know, what would you do differently?
I think I would do all the things we just talked about a little bit sooner. But in one area, as much as we like to think we've all got a handle because we've all been doing this for over 20 years, 30 years, there's still so much for us to learn. I think I would have done a deeper dive earlier in the sales operations, administration, and project management to make sure that each of us as partners were truly proficient in all of the areas. I just would have started earlier. And so if you're starting 5 years before and you're really digging into financials and you're digging into how this transition would work, you're going to be more prepared when you actually get to the contract phase and feel solid about, the alignment of where all three of you are going.
Okay. Let's say I'm either considering buying into a company as you have, or I'm considering selling a company to the next generation. What are some action items that you just like to leave the audience with in terms of what to do in that situation?
Well, the first, and this is not an action item, this is just advice, but it's communicate and collaborate.
Okay.
Take the ideas from everybody, truly listen to everybody, communicate what you're really feeling, and make sure it's an open, honest discussion around these things. One would be define the concept of how you want to do the buyout, how you want to do the transition, who's going to be involved early. Okay. And have those discussions, get it all written down. Before you bring in attorneys and CPAs and everything else, really go to your why and what.
So let me ask you just real quick, why write it all out and discuss it before the attorneys and CPAs come in the door?
What we have found both in our own transition and talking to others, attorneys come in and want to mitigate all risk, and they'll get everybody taking sides. And they should, because they should look at that. Remember, we talked about the worst case. If something goes wrong, yep. They are there to protect everyone when something goes wrong. Yep. If you can tell your attorney and your CPA what you're thinking and the why behind why you're thinking it, then that gives them a much better framework for writing a contract.
Okay. That's excellent.
And we've just found that out.
That's beautiful.
But there is a caveat to that, and that's number two. As you're having the discussions internally amongst the partners or your executive team, consult an attorney and consult a CPA for the legality of what you want to do. Don't go all the way down a road and find out, oh yeah, tax-wise, you can't do that.
Yeah, right.
Consult and say, hey, here's the concepts. Here's what we're thinking. Are we still, between the two lines? Are we still going down the middle of the road? And they will justify what you're doing, knowing that you're in the right direction, so you don't get to the end and find out you have to start over.
Any other advice?
And this is a phase that we're in, because we're basically halfway through this transition.
I know, huh?
And we're getting all the contracts together. And should we have done contracts earlier? Yeah, possibly. We've got really good trust. Everything's going well. And I'm glad we're doing what we're doing in this situation. But finalizing the documents is where the whole thing can come unwound. And that's where the rubber hits the road, where you actually have to put in writing truly what the concept is, all the details, and all the negatives, and how people are going to be protected. And that can scare a team really, really quickly when you hear, oh my gosh, look at all that risk we have.
Yes.
So keep that line of communication open during the finalizing of the documents and make sure that you stay on the path. And that's what's going to make the whole process successful.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I really like just that one takeaway as you're going through the process. It's so easy to get all excited about the prospect of either selling the business or I'm now going to be the owner. But you really do have to do a lot of that worst case scenario thinking and going through that process of dividing up responsibilities, dividing up final calls, and all the things that we've discussed here today. Mm-hmm. As we wrap up here, Doug, any final words on this process for the audience? Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Whenever you get into the thick of it and you're feeling tense, you've got a lot of conflict going back and forth between the partners. Detach, take a step back, listen to one another, communicate and collaborate. Put a good plan together that's beneficial for everybody. Find a balanced approach. Don't go to your corners. I know that's really tough sometimes, but try to keep everything out in the middle and be honest with one another, and that'll bring you to the end.
Doug, that's terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that this is a very
It's a hot topic for a lot of folks here in my audience, and I appreciate you being open and just diving into it. And I do wish you all the best. I think we're going to have you back on here in about 3 years once you've completed the.
I hope to bring you really good news, sir.
That's beautiful. Thanks very much for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.